What's up, everyone? Chris Lopez here, and welcome to another Drinks and Deep Dives. So today, we're going to talk about showing trends. They are changing here in Denver. We're going to go through a duplex that a client recently purchased in Denver and go through about how it's a great long-term investment while also matching up what his investment goals are as an out-of-state investor. Then we'll go through a couple of common questions that clients have been asking us recently. And my co-host today is Preston Newberry. Preston, how are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
Doing really good. I'm enjoying the shows here as we're getting a better rhythm with them.
Getting a better rhythm, having a lot of fun, just digging into some deals and enjoying it.
Yeah, it's all coming together, it feels like, for the show. So one thing I want to mention again before we jump into our first factoid is I mentioned this last week, but we are starting to redo our whole ADU or accessory dwelling unit podcast series. We did it 2 or 2.5 years ago, the first version. A lot has changed. We're doing a second version now. So I've got a 2-question survey I'd love people to fill out. It'll be in the show notes and the comments here. But one question about what questions do you have? The other is we are looking to connect with experts around Denver that have built ADUs, that have financed ADUs, that know all the different aspects of ADUs, and we also want to connect with people that have built ADUs themselves to potentially come do some video walkthroughs. So if you have any interest in ADUs, please fill out that survey. So going to our factoid today. And so what we're going to talk about here is just showing trends. So, every month we typically cover this in our monthly market update, but we want to talk about today because this just came out a few days ago. And what this does is this shows how many showings are scheduled through, the common showing service that realtors and clients use to book showings, how many showings there are per property. Now, you can see this year in 2021, that purple line up there, we've been very high. Like we've been in the 20s, and the average for many the last couple of years have been between like 10 to 14. Yep. So almost a 50% increase in some instances over showings per property. Now, to paint a picture of the graph, for those who can't see, in April, we were at 21. In May, we're at 18. In June, we're at 14. So it very much looks like a very steep hill. Normally, we're between like 8 and 10 in June, but we're at 14. So showings are dropping off a lot. Preston, you've got listings. You're out there helping clients on the buy side. So you got a foot in each side of the
we're playing both
trench
sides
out
of the fence
there
right now for sure.
What are you seeing out there? What's it like, in the trenches?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely, it's still competitive. There's still a lot of active buyers out there. We're definitely above, record normals for what we're seeing for showing activity. But I think the correlation between when the world opened back up again and people were able to get out and do stuff and the showing traffic decrease is probably a pretty good indicator of, what's going on right now. People are traveling, they're getting back to doing things. Some of the buyers have pulled out of the market a little bit because they got discouraged or whatever the case may be. So yeah, we've definitely seen a little bit of a slowdown in some of the showing traffic, but the serious competitive buyers and sellers are still out there doing stuff. And we're still, competing with multiple offers and have a lot going on.
So going back from now to 2 months ago, back to April, May, what's the offer process look like, or how competitive is it? Hey, you're out there just looking at a duplex or single family home, typical residential property that we help people invest in.
Yeah.
What's the feeling like?
The feeling is still, like I said, very competitive, but I think buyers are becoming a little bit more subdued in kind of what they're throwing for offers out there right now. I mean, good properties that are priced well in nice areas are still going to drive 15, 20, 30 offers we're seeing. But, we're not just seeing buyers throwing crazy offers out there that they're not 100% committed to the property. Whereas previously people were just doing whatever they could to get under contract. And we were seeing some stuff fall back out, after a week or two or whatever, because buyers got cold feet because they were just so anxious to get something under contract. I think we're seeing a lot more serious stuff happening right now. And not as much craziness with people just trying to get something under contract.
And I think it was 2 weeks ago, you had a listing for a, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house in Arvada.
Yep.
Up in Arvada. Tell us about that and how many offers you get, because that, went recent.
Yeah. So that was something we were, a little bit unsure of how it was going to go because we went live the weekend before 4th of July, which is typically not a great time to do it, seasonality wise. And we'd started to see some of the showing trends and showing traffic drop off, but it was one of those things where we knew it was either list it then or we were going to have to wait till after the 4th of July. So we went ahead and made the decision to list it. And we ended up having over 65 showings in 2.5 days, and fielded over 20 different offers on the property.
Wow.
So we were pleasantly surprised with that, just knowing what we were seeing out in the market. But I think that just goes and speaks to the fact that, hey, if you have, a property in the right place, it's priced correctly. And that was a ton of the feedback that we got was like, hey, it was priced right. You guys did your job, and that's going to drive offers.
All right. So moving on to our deep dive here. This is going to be a duplex we're talking about, Preston, that an out-of-state client purchased fairly recently. I need a minute to pull up the spreadsheet, but kind of give some backstory on the client and his goals while I get the spreadsheet pulled up, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a client that reached out to us from out of state. Very well educated buyer, knew what he wanted to do, wanted to invest in Denver, has a full-time job, didn't want to have anything that was going to require a ton of time on his part, but he knew the expectations of investing in Denver and investing out of state were fitting his profile, right? And for him, it was not about cash flow. It was more about just taking, some of the money that he had and putting it in a property that was going to allow him to ride the appreciation wave. And as long as it wasn't going to cost him a lot of money every month to subsidize it, that's what he wanted. And it's part of his plan. He's going to invest in property every single year. His goal is to buy one property in Denver every year for the next 5 to 7 years. I think eventually he'll end up moving out here at some point, but he just wants to be in the market and was tired of sitting on the sidelines.
And what's very interesting about this client, because I think we started talking to him, I think it was last year, or maybe really beginning of this year, but he also, he's on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's in private equity or, some type of funding up there. So he's very familiar with the equities world and how Wall Street works. And it's been very interesting talking with him. Hey, what he's doing on there, for investing.
Yeah,
and
what
helping
are
clients.
the big boys doing, right?
And also why he's diversifying the real estate. And it's very interesting his perspective, where cash flow was not his main priority.
No.
Do you recall any specifics? I mean, this was months ago. I remember talking to him, but I remember found it just very enlightening because, cool, here's a very smart guy in the financial world. And it's his perspective and a very detailed analysis on the types of properties he was looking for.
Yeah, and I think that was a thing that you and I both really enjoyed about working with him is he came to us with a plan. He said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to execute this. I know you guys can help me make it happen. And he took his knowledge of, what he does day in and day out for his career and realized that for him to get in the market and do what he wanted to do, starting in a market that was like Denver, where he could ride the appreciation wave and didn't have to worry about the cash flow every month, and could start getting into real estate and taking what he's learning from, everything that he does all day long and start to build his own portfolio, because as we all know, that's why we're here, right? We want to invest in real estate and look for the long term.
All right. So we're going to move to the spreadsheet here. We have got numbers.
Thank you, Chris.
And we will start plugging them in. So this is a duplex in Arvada. And I mean, this is a great location because it was not too far from Old Town, right?
Not too far from Old Town. It's really close to the light rail that they've got installed up there. Really close to a lot of amenities, restaurants, shopping, all that kind of stuff. So really, really a good part of town.
So what was the purchase price?
Purchase price was $715,000.
Okay. 25% down payment?
Yes.
Approximate acquisition cost?
Yeah. He was in it for just under $200,000.
Okay. So acquisition about 10,000, 15.
Yep.
All right. And then as far as initial repair cost, did he have to put any money in here to get the property up to spec? What's the condition of it?
That was a great thing about this property and what fit his box, right? We always talk about, hey, what is our client's box? How can we, find something that's going to work for them? So this property was completely turnkey. The previous owners had done a ton of work to it. I mean, they put a new roof into it. They rehabbed both units. It was an up-down duplex, so they rehabbed both units. The boiler had been updated within the last few years. We actually got them to replace the water heater as well before closing. So sewer line had been done. I mean, this place was ready to go. It had one tenant in place, and one of them actually vacated right as we were under contract because of all the COVID stuff happening, which actually turned out to be great for us because their lease was up in a few months anyway. So they just vacated early and allowed our client to be able to get it leased up after closing with a new long-term lease.
Wonderful. So completely turnkey, good to go.
Yep.
And so, like you said, new roof and new sewer line and new boilers. I mean, those are big CapEx items too.
CapEx items.
Yeah, sewer lines are not cheap.
No,
roofs aren't cheap.
And neither are boilers, right?
Yeah.
But in a house of this age, having the boiler is going to be way more efficient than what we typically see with normal furnaces, right? As long as it's been serviced and updated and kept up. So, boilers will last 25, 30. I mean, I've seen some that are 80 years old in some of these older buildings, right? But as long as you keep up with them, the maintenance cost is going to be less and the replacement cost is going to be better for the client in the long run.
What was the interest rate on this property?
3.875.
And that's 30-year fixed, right?
30-year fixed, conventional.
All right.
Thanks to our friends over at Castle and Cook.
Now, rents. What's that like?
Yeah, so rents, the upper unit was rented for $18.95, or actually $19.95. They just upped that one. And then the lower unit, they got leased up at $2,000.
All right. So about just under $4,000 a month total in gross rents. Property management, I'm assuming yes, since he's out of state.
Yep, yes, for property management. I think he's just at 9%.
Monthly reserves and maintenance, I mean, what, 5% since it's a turnkey property?
I would run it at 5%. I mean, obviously, we're very conservative when we underwrite stuff. I think our client is using 8% for his own spreadsheet, but I think, 5% is probably very workable for this property.
I mean, that's why I ran, at least for the first few years. It should be, knock on
wood.
wood,
right?
should be minimal stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so HOA, no. Taxes?
Taxes just under $3,000, so $2,903.
Insurance?
$2,600.
Okay. Now, what about utilities?
So this is where things get a little bit different with this place, is that there are not currently a RUB system, utility bill back system in place, right? So that's one area that our client can improve on, and he's going to work on that with property management. But for him, it was more important to just get the property stabilized, get everything done, and then they can work on that as leases turn or as tenants extend leases and things like that. So water and sewer is going to be about $1,550 a year.
Okay. Trash,
we're going to run at $300 a year. So Arvada just implemented a new citywide trash program, which is really cool because it reduced the trash costs for a lot of the residents. And it's something now, just like Denver, they bill back to the tenants, on a quarterly basis, I believe. And it's going to be about $25 to $30 per property per month.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
they even give you the free trash cans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Electric, is it separate metered?
Electric is separately metered. So that's all going to be tenant's responsibility.
What about gas? You said a boiler, so probably single meter
on the gas. Gonna hopefully somewhere, they're kind of getting everything stabilized right now, but should be around $150 ish a month. So we'll just call it $1,800 a year.
Okay. And that was one thing. I mean, we know it was like right after it closed, there was a higher than expected gas bill.
Yep.
Which, hey, we were chatting about that back and forth and just, gave some thoughts, and, he's got the property manager digging into it, which is what you have property managers do.
You have a property manager, right? They can be the bad guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, we expect to be around that because that's more in line with what we see with other properties, because as a boiler system should be more efficient. Any other expenses on here?
Landscaping.
Okay.
We're going to underwrite about $1,000 a year for snow removal, lawn care, stuff like that. There's a sprinkler system here. So, they're going to want to keep up with the lawn and all that. So just about $1,000 a year to be conservative. Okay.
Now, those rent numbers you gave above $1,995 and $2,000, do those include the utility bill back in there?
Yeah. So those are inclusive of utilities right now.
And so we just took because that's what we're estimating as far as like, is there more room to add utilities on top of that?
Yeah, I think you could probably do a utility bill back of about $100 a month per unit.
Okay. So right now, standing as is with those numbers, you can see it comes down here. It's about a break-even cash flow, negative $600 for the year, which is a negative 0.3% cash-on-cash return and a 4.1% cap rate. So here's where it gets interesting. Let's go back and actually change the utility numbers around some. I'm sorry, the written numbers of utilities. You were saying on top of this, another $100?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty conservative, $75 to $100 a month per unit.
So I'm going to come in here and just add $100 per unit on there. And that's where it changes from a 4.1 to a 4.4% cap rate. So 0.3 of a point. Right? Yep, it's significant and positive cash flow. So this is always an important thing to look at as you're looking at properties, especially underwriting them. And, even once you kind of get through your initial due diligence phase is, don't get too fixated on like a hard number. Like, oh, this has to be above a 4.5% cap rate because, $50 a month in extra rent or utilities can move it 1 or 2/10 of a point.
Exactly.
And $50 a month is not a lot of money. Like,
you're not really going to see that, right?
Yeah. No one should.
There's so many different levers that you can pull to get the numbers where you want them to go. And that was something that was really nice about working with this client is he was very open to that and very understanding of like, hey, I know this is all very fluid, but like this fits for where I want to be and what works for me.
So still getting a great return on the overall money. And we're talking, mid 20% returns between appreciation, cash flow, depreciation, debt pay down. And for appreciation, let me see what variable. Yeah, we've got a 5% appreciation rate in there.
which
is very reasonable.
And I think the 3% rent increase is probably pretty conservative as well, especially for the market that we're in here in Denver. I think that, 5% is probably going to be a little bit more likely and accurate, especially as we move into 2022 and 2023.
It seems like rents are going up this year.
Yep. They're finally creeping up and catching on to where housing prices have gone.
And the fact that there's not enough supply.
Yep.
So one of the things I know for this client is, he's very much, I'll say, more like trend focus. In terms of investing, where, hey, Denver is a great market that's growing, as you said, just ride that wave of growth. And he was much more interested in just equity and appreciation build. That was like one of his main goals,
was his
right?
Main goal, right? And if you go and look at the long-term analysis for him, looking at years 5 to 7, he's basically going to be doubling what he put in his equity, right? So his $200,000 is now going to become, over $400,000.
Okay, so we are at year 5 here. Oh, give me a second. All right, so we're looking at year 5 on the long-term analysis spreadsheet. And then total equity, estimated year 5 is $428,000. And he was all in for just under $200,000. So double between some debt pay down that his tenants were paying for and the appreciation side.
And knowing that his plan all along is to refinance in 5 to 7 years anyways, this is going to allow him to take some of that equity and go buy another property.
And that's the plan, right?
Yep.
All right. And so this is where it gets very interesting is like, this is where you have to look at like what I'm saying, not you, Preston, but the listeners out there, what your goals are, what your plans are, what do you want to achieve, and match it up with the market. Because we always tell people, hey, cool, here's a Denver market. I'm holding my hand like a circle, and we can't change the Denver market.
We have to take what it gives us, right?
Exactly. And then, Denver market, and then, we've got people's personal goals here. Does their personal goal circle overlap with the Denver market circle? And if where it overlaps, that's where you can make something happen.
That's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah, and that's the reality of it. So people are like, oh, I want a 12% cap rate property.
Cool. Denver's not the place for you.
Yeah, Denver's not the place for it. I don't know any markets that are doing that right now.
Yeah.
But if your expectations don't match up with the reality of the market, that's where it gets difficult. But if your expectations and goals work with the market, great, dude. If they don't, figure out a different option, a different investment or a different market. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
You got to be able to adapt and, work with what you've got. And everyone's a little bit different, right? Some people are more focused on cash flow. Some people are more focused, like our client here, on, the long term and riding the appreciation wave. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just about understanding and setting the expectations and knowing what works for you. And is that going to work in the market that you're trying to invest in?
So this property is very much a win. I mean, something to always keep in mind, it's a great location. It's in great shape. Numbers are solid, and it fits our investors or our clients' goals and strategy. Yep. So it checks the boxes, move forward, ride the wave, and then in 5 years, 7 years, pull out cash, refinance it, buy more properties.
And by then he'll have 3 or 4 other properties, and you just, waterfall down the line and keep on doing it.
All right. So anything else you want to mention about this property, Preston, before we move on?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I mean, it's just, it's one of those things. Don't get so fixated on, one part of the transaction or one part of the analysis, and understanding, what's going to work for you. And is that, does that fit your client profile?
All right. So moving on to our questions here. So I always like to, when guests come on, I always ask them, hey, what questions are you hearing?
Yep.
Now, obviously, we do a lot of work with the same clients, Preston. So I hear questions. You hear some different questions as well, though. So, over the last month or, month and a half, what questions are you hearing frequently from clients as you're out there getting properties on contract, wheeling, dealing, all that stuff?
I think one of the biggest ones that I end up talking a lot about with clients, and this property just fits that as well, is, what's going on with cap rates, right? Everyone kind of uses that as a base metric to analyze properties. And, we've definitely seen cap rates compress a little bit. I mean, looking at this property, for instance, a year and a half, 2 years ago, this would have been over a 5 cap, right? But we're starting to see, as prices have come up and, rents are slowly starting to creep up, but they haven't been over, the last 18 months, is that cap rates are going to compress. Interest rates are still low. So, the spread is still there, but it's definitely understanding that you're going to be losing out a little bit on the cash flow, and understanding that this market is now, riding that appreciation cycle and being comfortable with that.
And that's a really important point to I think it's always an important point to hit home with people, is that, for this type of financing that this client uses, Duplex, it's a 30-year fixed. That is your biggest expense you have on the property. And if you come back to that long-term analysis tab on the spreadsheet here and you look at cash flow, we'll go back to year 5. Cash flow is going to be at $500 a month then, close to, or just under $500 a month, about $5,500 a year in cash flow. So that's also assuming other expenses go up with taxes, insurance, and all the other stuff.
Going up, right?
Rents are going up. And again, we have a pretty conservative rent number in there right now, but we've been seeing the last few months, both in Denver and the spring, some pretty significant rent jumps as people have renewed properties or they've gone out there and, got new tenants in there. I mean, we've beat the performance by $100 or $200 a month, which is, it changes the numbers a lot.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is, inflation, right? As we start to move through the rest of this year and into 2022, I think, we're all waiting to see how that's going to play out. But typically whenever, we start to see inflation on the rise, rents are going to come up a little bit. And that's going to be better from a landlord's perspective because it's just going to help the bottom line.
All right. Another question you said people are asking is, what is happening with interest rates?
Yeah, I mean, that's all a correlation to cash flow.
That happens all the time.
It happens all the time. But I think, interest rates, as we've watched what the Feds are doing and knowing that they say they're not going to, raise anything right now, we did see a little bit of a dip in interest rates over the last couple of weeks. I haven't checked here at the beginning of the month to see kind of where things are at now, but it's good to know that they're staying steady. If not, they're not moving around a whole lot. So that is very, instills a lot of confidence in buyers right now to keep pushing forward. And, even if they feel like they're paying a premium for properties, knowing that they're locking that in for 30 years.
Yeah, because I mean, for investment properties, depending on, kind of down payment range and a couple other options, we're seeing from about, little above mid threes to low fours, in that 15 to 25% down range. And then for, owner occupied properties, I mean, we're still seeing stuff in the sub 3, like, 2.5 to low 3% range.
On a couple properties last month between, 2.6 and 2.8.
Yeah, which is still crazy.
It's crazy.
So even as we've seen headlines of interest rates go up, all this stuff, like, long run, they're still very good. They're still below cap rates, which is an important metric to look at. And I mean, don't know how long that will last for, but take it while you can and lock in the money. So interest rates, your predictions, they'll hold steady?
I think they'll hold steady at least through the end of this year. I think, 2022 could be a different story, but at this time, let's just take it and run with it. Great.
All right. So covered the showing trends. We got the property, covered some questions. What else?
What questions?
Or is there anything else?
No, I was going to say, what questions are you hearing from clients, Chris? I mean, obviously you have a lot of conversations with people, but let's throw it back at you.
What questions am I hearing? I hear, let's see, what was the most recent question I've heard? I mean, I get this a lot, is just, is it a good time to buy? And again, it's a very much loaded question.
It is.
And it just goes back. It depends is the answer. It depends on the person's goals. I mean, I'm under contract in place right now and I'm closing next week. It's a good property. I mean, nothing, it's not a smoking deal or anything.
It's no home run, but it's still a solid base hit, right?
But it hits my goal. If I can buy 1 or 2 properties a year, I'm happy. That's my goal. And I actually locked in, cheap financing on there to go acquire it. So it's a good time to buy. I think it still is because interest rates are still staying low. Prices, they should stop appreciating quite as fast, but I think they will continue to appreciate. And then, but also hold high cash reserves. But my time horizons, I'll hold this property for, I would think, at least 5 years, maybe 7 years, and look at pulling out equity from a sell or a refi, and then go out there and reposition it. So that's a question I get a lot. And I think the answer is generally yes, as long as you kind of meet these other check these boxes with high cash reserves and you have a long-term horizon. It's very hard to lose money in real estate.
It is. And I think that's one thing that a lot of investors always look back on, because you can ask a lot of experienced investors that same question. Is it a right time to buy? And I think 99% of them will all say, I wish I would have started sooner.
Yep. That's what everyone says. I wish I bought more back then.
I buy more. Yep. So
awesome. Well, Preston, this has been great. Thank you for taking time. I know you got properties you're wheeling and dealing on, so thank you. And, audience, please submit your questions out here. If there's topics that you want us to do a deep dive into, email me, reach out to us. Let me know and join us. We're live every Wednesday at 12. They come on the podcast the following week. And we got lots of fun stuff with the show plan as we upgrade it. We're going to add some sound effects, visualizations. We're going to make it a better show is one of our goals for the summer. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.